In 1951, archaeologists in Russia uncovered birch bark manuscripts done by a child named Onfim. Onfim was around 6 or 7 years old, and he lived in Russia in the 13th century. His writings include like practicing the alphabet, he did some doodles, he even did some doodles on his homework, practicing the alphabet. Onfim's most famous image is him on top of a wild beast proclaiming, "I am a wild beast." If Onfim was around today, he'd be in the 1st grade, which is how old I was when I wrote everything down in a journal. This is something that I recently discovered, much like those Russian archaeologists, and I am Russian to show you guys what's inside. We're gonna examine this, we're gonna deep dive, it is complex literature, and we're gonna get to the bottom of it. That's right, all of this was a setup to show you my writing. Fuck. No. Hello everybody, welcome back to Jaxology. This is my YouTube channel. I can do whatever the hell I want. So today, we're going to be doing a deep dive and analysis of my diary from 1st grade. As you can see here, I was 6, going on 7 when I wrote this, and if you're expecting a funny video, today is not going to be a funny video. I'm sorry. Go get your laugh somewhere else because this is a serious conversation. The wisdom in here just simply needs to be preserved, and that is what I'm trying to do today. As you can see, okay, so this is the first day, August 13th, 2008. The recession was just beginning, right? This was a very dark time in American history, and I was really capturing that here. You can see not even words. There was no words for this entry. This is just kind of a primal expression of maybe the fear, maybe the anger of the 2008 housing crisis and recession. You can see I've pictured my own house here, right? This is what a lot of Americans hoped for at this time, just a family to sit around the table at, eat dinner. And I think really in a way that was just me kind of counting my blessings. You know, it wasn't easy for my family. This is me and my family eating dinner. It looks like spaghetti. And over here is our TV. And then some kind of machine in the top right corner. Could this be a voting booth? This might be commentary. The election was coming up. It is August 13th. I know it was on my mind. It was on everybody's mind, you know, who's going to pull us out of this crisis, right? August 13th to August 14th, right? The difference of one day. But something shifted. I've started drawing in color. The dichotomy of my mind is that, you know, some days are dark, gray, and gloomy, no color. Boom. The next day, all of a sudden, a splash of color. I'm playing with Legos. Is this a commentary on my family, right? Because the first day you see I'm sitting here with my family at the table. Everything is dark and gloomy. But the second I go to my room, the very next day, could have been midnight. We could have been eating dinner at 11:59. Then boom, I go to my room, 12, midnight. My world comes alive. The Legos come out. The color fills my world. And I felt very misunderstood at this age, so like this makes so much sense. And also August 14th is my grandpa's birthday. Here we have our first appearance of written language in this book. And you know, I was just learning how to write, and so this is very impressive. What thoughts may come out of a 6-year-old's mind when he's first learning how to write? This is August 19th, 2008. I write, "Yesterday I rode my bike." Now, it's probably supposed to say rode. "My brother rode his new bike. We had fun." 3 lines, but there's so much going on there. Let's unpack this. Okay, first I say, "Yesterday I rode my bike," okay? And then I say, "My brother rode his new bike." Notice I added the word new. Could this sort of maybe simplify, and you know, I know we're all thinking the same thing, could this simplify some sort of jealousy going on between me and my brother? My brother has a new bike and I just have my bike. And to top it all off, we had fun. We had fun, as simple as that. Not we were having fun, not it was fun. we had fun, as in we once had fun. But what is today when I'm writing this article, this document? I had fun. There used to be fun in my life, and now it is gone. And as you can see here, I have portrayed myself as the blue bike and my brother as the red bike. Now again, the election was close, or about 60 days away. And this was a historic election. Again, it was on everybody's minds. So could this be election commentary? The red versus the blue, and they're riding directly at each other while my mom watches. Here in the corner, hands out, an innocent bystander to all this political chaos. Could be. Moving on, August 21st, 2008. Now I want to advise you guys, brief trigger warning here. This was, I remember this was a very hard day for my family. And if you don't like descriptions of violence and damage, just skip ahead. August 21st, 2008, my mom's plate broke. It was sad. I remember this very clearly. My mom had gotten a plate. We went to visit my grandparents in South Dakota. My mom had bought a plate with Mount Rushmore on it, and it broke. And as you can see here, I depict everything as green. She is green, and the plates are green too, because I knew how her and this plate were connected. They have the same aura, the same vibrance, the same hue. They are both green. Notice nothing else in this image is green except for her and the plate and the floor on which it lands. And it fell off our TV, landed on the ground. She's looking down at it. A part of her has died.
Well, I just remember thinking that I had just traveled 18 hours in a car with an almost 2-year-old and a 4-year-old with a pottery plate in a bag, made it all the way home, put it on the mantle, and then I think it was literally within a couple of days, that thing was off the mantle in pieces. I think that was just a very a very draining time in my life. You guys were.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was tired.
Yeah. Wow. August 22nd, 2008. We saw a woodpecker and a big beetle. It was so cool. I'm assuming the beetle is a beetle. And we saw this woodpecker, we saw this beetle. It was cool. They were in this big tree. What was going on August 22nd, 2008? Now, at first I'm thinking this is a bit surface level. You know, for my type of thinking, everything else has been, so packed, so charged. And this is just a simple, simple description of what I saw. And it just didn't sit right with me, right? Everything else was just so obviously a commentary on something else. So I looked up what happened on August 22nd, 2008, and it all clicked. Here's what it said. On August 22nd, 2008, the Azizabad airstrike in Afghanistan resulted in the deaths of 92 civilians, mostly children. Obviously, at 6 years old, I would have been aware of this thing that happened on that day. So why am I choosing to ignore it? And then, I started to think about it more and more, and I'm looking at this picture, and I realize, yes, we're the woodpecker. Okay, the tree is Afghanistan. What are we getting from the tree? Resources, oil, money, peck, peck, peck. We're pecking away. The big beetle. The ships in the sky, a big beetle flies overhead. It just makes sense, okay? It was so cool. And obviously at 6 years old, I didn't understand, the depths of Afghanistan. I'm seeing soldiers go out and thinking, go, 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 save America, save America. I wasn't really understanding. And obviously now I know, we shouldn't have been there. But you know, even at 6 years old, I was ignorant. At recess, I played Monster. We've been playing for 3 days. Wow. Playing Monster for 3 days. I've been looking for double meanings and things this whole time, but I truly believe that this actually happened. You see here, I'm trapped in this kind of void, and I'm saying, help me. Sometimes I felt like recess was like that. I'm sitting there in class, and they say, now you have to go outside, and you have to play, and I'm there, I'm not done learning. I'm not done learning. I have so much to learn. Why are we taking a break for recess? We played Monster for 3 days. What are we doing? So whether this was literal or figurative, I knew at a very early age that there were monsters in the world. This next one here is getting into kind of a metaphysical. I don't know if you guys are familiar with, quantum physics, quantum string theory. But this is kind of getting into that. And so, I'm going to try to break it down the best I can. But, if you don't understand, that's okay. That's totally okay. So I write here on Monday. And by the way, there's no date on this. This could have happened any day. But I say on Monday, I went here and rode my bike. I went here. What am I trying to say? I'm assuming... where was I writing this? School. So I guess I went to school, but, I'm not stupid. I would have written, I went to school, right? So what am I trying to say by, I went here? I went here. And I believe it is my way of telling the readers to be present. Where am I? I went here. Where did you go? I went there. I went here. I'm here right now. And I know at this time I was getting interested in Buddhism and really trying to expand my mind and just live in the present. And that's nirvana, that's Buddhism at its core. It was a reminder, I was here. Someone was here. I was here writing this. And what did I do? I rode my bike. Now this is a callback, if you remember. I rode my bike a long time ago too, in this book. Now bikes are gonna be a theme. Bikes are going to be a theme going through this. There's a lot of times when I ride my bike, and I believe it's kind of a motif going through this. What does a bike represent? Freedom. So what do we have here? September 22nd, 2008. Yesterday, my grandparents came over because my mom and dad were at a Colts game. That's football. We stayed up late. Wow. So clearly here, we're having a good time, but in the image, everything's not quite what it seems. When my parents, they were at a football game instead of here at home with me, their child. And you can see that I'm kind of confused. Why is grandma here? Where's my mom? Where's my dad? The roof is almost caving in with all of this baggage. You have so many different colors on the roof. And you can see it's starting to slip through right underneath the ceiling fan, right? And so over time, these things start to build up. They start to build and build and build. And, we're unaware. And maybe it's not even affecting us at the time. Because look, we're smiling, we're having fun. But this is the future starting to cave in. After years and years of this kind of negligence, it's eventually going to crash. And I'm looking at this from a bird's eye view of the house. And over here, we see some kind of machine outside, some sort of pink contraption. This is probably CPS. On October 16th, 2008, I write, last night, Who Bob What Pants was on. I watched it. It was cool. So what? I'm writing about, I watched SpongeBob last night. Who cares? Well, I thought that too, but when you really start to think about what this episode was about, if you start to dive in and do the research, you'll realize that maybe there's more than meets the eye on this one. Now, if you don't remember, Who Bob What Pants was season 5, episode 18 of SpongeBob. It was a special event episode It had a premiere, and I was very excited to watch it. In the episode, SpongeBob bumps his head and loses his memory. Now he does this after he makes a lot of his friends angry, there's some misunderstandings, and he feels like he needs to leave home. So the show was already pretty well established by then, and the plots that they were doing getting a little bit more darker, more intense, and as a young person, I'm catching on to this. This is a show I'm watching, it's very important to me. I'm invested in it emotionally. SpongeBob makes his friends mad. Happens to everybody, right? There's a few misunderstandings, his friends are mad at him, he breaks Gary's shell. Gary's not very happy, but SpongeBob takes all this personally, right? He decides he's just gonna run away. He leaves town, and on the way, a tragedy happens, right? An accident. He bumps his head, loses his memory. And this causes SpongeBob to kind of move to a new city and start a completely new life. Obviously, at the end, he remembers who he is and reunites with his friends and clears everything up, okay? But, at the time, I think this episode resonated very deeply with me. I'm going through changes, right? I'm making this huge jump, right? This is not kindergarten anymore. First grade, and don't get me wrong, first grade is difficult and there are changes, but these were changes I was ready to accept, right? And much like SpongeBob, I kind of, I made mistakes. I screwed up. I was a kindergartner, right? I just, I was young, I was dumb, I made mistakes. But first grade, right? This is the year where I can forget all that. I bumped my head like SpongeBob in Who Bob What Pants. I'm saying, who is this Bob, right? And what pants is he gonna wear? And I always felt that SpongeBob and I, how we had a lot in common. We were goofy, but we had like a sweet side too. We loved, innocence, whimsy, and but we weren't afraid to get our hands dirty and work either. And that's what I always felt resonated between me and SpongeBob. So clearly, I'm addressing an episode of SpongeBob. There's gonna be a personal stake in it. And that's what you have to realize when you're analyzing text like this. It's not always just what's on the surface. So this is the next day, October 17th, 2008. I'm still riding off of that high from Who Bob What Pants. I'm probably feeling refreshed, some more direction in my life, and just feeling great, feeling on top of the world. So I write, the best day in the week was when my grandma came to the school. We had fun. Now let's unpack that. This was probably a response to some kind of prompt. Or maybe it wasn't, right? Maybe I'm just saying it because it's true. Those are two worlds colliding. Grandma's house and the school. This is an incursion level event that probably has not occurred until this point. I'm fairly fresh into my school journey. Mom comes to school a lot. Dad pretty much, in the mornings every day. Grandma, she's not even supposed to be at school. And clearly, my excitement was palpable. I'm starting with 3 words that immediately grip you, and you're tell me. And something about my literary style at this point, like kind of the form I think I was going for, is I'm not gonna explain everything to you, right? I don't think my audience is dumb. What did we do? We had fun. Let the audience decide what that means for them. I'm leaving it kind of up for interpretation, right? Fun for me in this picture is me and my grandma standing outside some sort of building, and a large bird is flying overhead, right? But, happiness to someone else might be a warm summer day, a smile, a birthday, right? And so these sort of images can come to mind while you're reading my work, and that's the genius that, I've kind of lost, that I'm really, just astounded by when I flip through these pages. October 29th, 2008, and heads up, this one is very important to my development, right, as a person, and as a character, as you'll see throughout these pages. So October 29th, 2008. Yesterday I went to the library. We went for a really short time. I read 2 books. So let's unpack this. What am I really trying to say here? Because there is a deeper message, right? Yesterday, I went to the library. What is a library? A place with books, a place with knowledge, right? This is a place I probably frequented, as a young intellectual. But what's next? And this is the most important part. We went for a really short time. I read 2 books. Now, what does that mean? In a really short time, I'm telling you, I was able to read 2 books. What is a really short time? An hour? 30 minutes? And I was able to read 2 books. I really needed to know more, so I researched how much does the average person spend at the library. 56% of people said they spend less than 1 hour per week. But the thing you have to remember, as I said, we went for a really short time. So what is a really short time in comparison to the average? An hour. That's the normal amount of time to spend at a library. About an hour if you're gonna go. And that's assuming that people are answering with the idea that they're going once per week, right? 1 hour and not split up in between 5 days for 20 minutes each. This is being gratuitous here, right? If the average amount of time spent at a library is 1 hour, okay, I went for a really short time. So the ratio that we're talking here is I'm probably reading 2 books in 10, 20, could be 30, but still impressive. We're talking about books. It now takes me sometimes weeks, months, even a year to finish a book. The hubris of this passage is so evident. But when I'm displaying feats like this, reading 2 books in what I'm reporting to be a really short time, right? This is something that needs to be documented. In fact, this is something that needs to be preserved. There's a gap of a few days, probably because of Halloween. And we return on November 5th, 2008, the day after the first Black president of the United States of America was elected, President Barack Obama. A historic election. I write, I like to play outside with my friends. We have fun. A young Democrat reveling in the victory of a lifetime, right? I'm playing with my friends. Life is good. Nothing else here but a young boy celebrating a historic win for people of color and for a nation as a whole. We are going to skip ahead into the new year. There are a few other passages. They are pre-Christmas drivel about, bowling and other things, playing video games. Just, my more playful side was coming out, but it really wasn't very thought-provoking, right? But that's okay. I have my intellectual side and my playful side. So we're going to skip ahead into the new year. This is January 14th, 2009. It was very fast for me to get to school today, but it was very cold. This is an enlightened mind. I've just returned from Christmas break, and I am well rested. My mind is calm. I've come to peace with the balance of things clearly here. It was a quick car ride to school, which, I'm sure I appreciated, the efficiency. But, on the other hand, it was very cold. You cannot have good without evil. There truly is no light without darkness, no? And, this is on full display here. I'm gonna bookmark this one to come back to later when I need it. January 15th, 2009. When I wasn't at school for 2 hours, I made a movie on the video camera. Then I played with Legos. This is very daring. I'm showing these to my teacher, to the school, potentially, to the administration. And I'm basically admitting I skipped school for 2 hours and, I wasn't sick. I wasn't at an appointment. Screw you, I was making a movie. And I played Legos. You know, this bullshit we're learning, it's useless, right? I'm telling you, hey man, fuck the system. Let me go out and play. Let me learn, let me draw, grow, create, make films, make art. In this corner, you can see the fall of an aristocratic society that values academia and good test scores and money over true creation and art. Hey, Mr. Teacher, I'm gonna make art today, and it's not gonna be under your watch. February 23rd, 2009. On the weekend, I played my Lego Batman game on the PlayStation 2. But it was from the video store, so my dad took it back. But it was really fun. I vividly remember these days. I, no joke, would rent the Lego Batman game from Family Video every single week. My family would let us pick out a movie or a video game from Blockbuster or Family Video every Friday. And I would pick the Lego Batman game for the PlayStation 2 every single time. Eventually, my family just bought it for me because we were basically weekly renting one game that cost like $20. And I could not get past the first level where Clayface breaks out of the bank. And every single weekend, my family would rent this game for me. And I would try to beat the Clayface level where he tries to break out of the bank, which is the first level of the entire game. And I wouldn't be able to do it. Our 3-day rental was up on Monday. My dad would take it back. And I did beat that level. But it took months. I think I was just very bad at it. Because looking back, the Lego games aren't very hard. Moving on. February 24th, 2009. Last night I played Goblet with my dad. We also played checkers. It was really fun. After that, we went to bed. My mom was gone while we were playing. Then she came back in the morning. My mom was gone until morning, in my point of view.
Yes, just to clarify that statement, you went to bed before I got home. I did come home at nighttime.
She stumbled through the door in the morning. Where was she? And my poor dad doesn't know either, right? He's just trying to distract me. Hey son, look at the pretty checkers. Let's play checkers. I don't know where your mommy is either. He's putting on such a brave face. His wife is gone. I say clearly here, she is gone. This man's wife is gone. I mean, you know, one theory points to the idea that, you know, maybe she came back after my bedtime, which was probably around 8 or 9 o'clock. You know, it was a weekend, so maybe she was out doing something that, you know, a normal adult would do, and you know, maybe that's actually a fairly normal time for an adult to get home on the weekend at 10 or 11, maybe even 12. But that just doesn't check out, you know. I wouldn't be drawing this, writing all of this. This is too earnest. Mom was gone, right? I don't mince words. And thankfully, it looks like just a few weeks later, I was healing from this, probably residing in the comfort and knowledge of books, because I said last night I counted how many Magic Treehouse books I have read, and I have almost read all of them. I have read 37 of them so far, and I have 3 more to go. So, sorry, I try to keep these separate, but look, February 24th to March 3rd, you know, that's a substantial amount of time. That's over a week. And what did I have time to do in between then? Clearly, read 37, almost 40. I'm talking 3 more books. Is 40 books, and I'm counting them. Now, if you don't know, Magic Treehouse is all about escape. It is a book series where these two children go into the woods, into a tree house, and say, I want to go there. And they're whisked away to a new world. And so a story like Jack and Annie's might really resonate with me. You know, there's a lot of symbology in those books. You know, there's theories that these kids were, you know, going through domestic situations, stuff like that, right? There's subtext in those books. Literature, hey? Just a young boy's escape. The final entry in this diary is here on this page. And you might be wondering, you know, how do you end a book like this? How do you take all of this stuff, all of this knowledge, all this wisdom, and just wrap it up? Let me share that with you. May 12th, 2009. Last night, I went to my grandparents' house. We brought our dogs. Now, hold on. You might be wondering, why would we bring our dogs to our grandma's house? That's not normal. The next line we read here, because we're moving. There it is. We're moving houses. And a person wants to look at it. On the next page, I write, at it. And we saw my friend Elizabeth. What is the final word in this entire passage? We. I don't believe that this was a grammatical mistake. A couple lines down, write the solitary we. What does that mean? Let's unpack that for a second. I am ending this book by saying we are all connected. This book is for everybody. We, as a world, we can change the world together, and that's what I'm saying here. We. What a beautiful parting message. All I wanted when I was 6 was for all the bad things in the world to stop. I wanted crime, racism, poverty, food lack. I wanted it to all just go away. Right? And that's what I'm saying here, we. And on the back of this book are pictures of some animals that I saw. A catfish, a cockroach, some kind of prairie dog, and a bear. Thank you for joining me in this journey. I know sometimes literary analysis, it can take a lot out of you. It's a lot to pay attention to. But there's a reason we do this work, right? It's, that authors demand to be understood, right? Words, language, literature, it's how we communicate as people, as humans. And it's my job as, doing what I do to make sure that, this is digested, right? This is communication, it's knowledge, it's important. And so I thank you all for taking this journey with me. Thank you for sticking around, and I'm really glad. If you have any questions or you just want to start a dialogue in the comments, please feel free to do so. This is a safe space, and any comments or questions, or just feel free to sound off on each other. Just sound each other off in the comments.